Okay. First item, please.
Are the minutes of the council and committee meeting held Monday, May 12th? Recommendation that the committee approve those minutes.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Oh, you didn't ask for additions to the agenda.
Oh, sorry. Are there any additions to the agenda?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question regarding emergency measures regarding floodplain. I never have this stuff, and now I got a whole bunch. So I've got floodplain. I've got the emergency measures course questions. I've got
Both wrapped in the same question?
no, they're two different items. And I just want to refer some letters, and I have a Board of Variance question.
Okay.
Everything came today.
Yeah, no.
For 6 months, I've had nothing.
And the clerk has all that. Any other items to it? Hearing none. Once again, I'll call the vote. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next item, please.
Okay, moving on to delegations. Our first delegation is from Liz McDowell of the Conversations for Responsible Economic Development regarding economic risks of proposed Trans Mountain Pipeline.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Hello there. Thank you, and thanks very much for having me. There's a lot I could say, but I also know that I don't have much time, so apologies if I'm going to zoom through pretty quickly. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. Is this on?
That's
Can you hear
on.
me all right?
That's on. Yeah.
Wonderful.
We're being webcast, that's why.
I see. So, as mentioned, my name is Liz McDowell, and I represent a business and professional group called CRED. And why I'm here right now is because we think we bring an important aspect of the conversation about the Trans Mountain Pipeline, which is the economic risks. Often environmental risks are pitted against economic benefits, and we want to contribute this bit. So that's what I'm going to be talking about today. Particularly on the issue that with this pipeline, which I know runs through a portion of Coquitlam, what we see is that the stakeholders who stand to benefit are not necessarily the same as those who assume the majority of the risk. And in particular, we're interested in the risk to the business community. So one of the things that we're interested in BC is where our wealth comes from. I'm going to zoom through this bit a little bit. But often there's a conversation about how we are a resource-based economy in this province. And in fact, extractive industries are only responsible for a very small percentage of our GDP. And an even smaller percentage of our jobs, only 1%. And we wanted to note that there's a significantly higher number of jobs in tourism, in technology, in real estate, and property development, and in fact also in the film sector than in oil and gas in our province. I wanted to talk through some of the questions that we have around the proponents' benefits of the project, and particularly put them in context a little bit. I'm sure you've heard from them already, or you've been having conversations about this, so I won't belabor the point too much. But the best case scenario with the Kinder Morgan pipeline is that there would be 50 new permanent jobs in Burnaby. And now that Kinder Morgan has put forward their proposal, it looks like there would be about 650 jobs during the construction phase across all of Metro Vancouver. That's on average, and those are generally construction jobs a little bit shorter term. And then, of course, there would also be indirect and induced jobs in things like service industries, supply and construction workers, but it's unclear how many those would be, and those would be a little bit lower. I also wanted to talk about tax revenues. Now, we've had a real challenge, our group, with getting solid data about the projected tax revenues. There's a little bit more information coming in now that the facilities application is in, but there's still quite a bit of inconsistent data that the proponent has. And the time frames have been shortened each time, of the payback period from 37 years to 36 years to 25 years and now to 20. So that's a little bit of a caveat. That said, what we've done is taken one set of numbers that was up on the Trans Mountain Project's website for the longest time. I think in the facilities applications, these have recently been upgraded a little bit. But provincially speaking, the amount of tax revenue that Kinder Morgan expects would be just under $10 million a year to BC. And what that would support in context is about one medium-sized elementary school, or about 10% of the running costs of a hospital. And the reason we think this is important is just, as I mentioned, there's often a dialogue about economic benefit and environmental risk. And the economic benefit, I think it's really important to put it in context and know who's benefiting here. In the city of Coquitlam, from what I understand, the expected tax revenues would be about $250,000 a year. You can correct me if you've heard differently, but this is what I took out of their application. And as I'm sure you all know, municipal tax revenues are not a free gift. They come with a responsibility to provide increased services, service roads, that sort of thing. And of course, if there's any sort of incident where there's first responders that have to respond to the scene, then oftentimes, the cost of that can actually be greater than the revenues. And as you may know, this is less than 1% of the city of Coquitlam's police budget. So that's approximately what the benefit that you're looking at here is. I want to talk a little bit about who benefits from this proposal, which is in particular oil producers upstream in Alberta. I didn't go over the details of the pipeline because I assumed you were all familiar with it. Is that a fair assessment? Okay, great. And often these producers also own refineries downstream. So these are the operations that are tending to benefit the most. And I think it's fair to say that the Alberta government will also benefit for the fair share of revenues as well. For BC, when we look at businesses in BC, there will be some benefits. But the thing about a pipeline when it's built is that oftentimes there's a flurry of economic activity in the beginning during the construction project, similar to any big construction project, so similar to the Port Mann Bridge or any infrastructure. There's a flurry during the construction process, but then once it's up and running, it needs very little maintenance as it goes along. So there's very little economic benefit that comes along with that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the risks of a spill, particularly. So when we look at what the risks of a spill are, we look at the likelihood that something would happen multiplied by the consequences if it did. So I think that, for example, the likelihood of a major tanker spill in Burrard Inlet is actually very, very low. The consequences, if it did happen, would be catastrophic, but the likelihood is low. The likelihood of a smaller spill or leak along the pipeline route is much higher because, in fact, on average, per 1,000 kilometers of pipeline in Canada, there's 2 spills or leaks a year. Now, most are very small, but it is a higher likelihood. Also, when people talk about the cost of a spill, quite often they talk about the cost of direct cleanup. And something that's often missing from the conversation that we really feel needs to be brought forward and made an attempt at measuring is what the longer-term economic impacts are. So to the tourism sector, for example, or to property values in the real estate sector, to small businesses that close and don't reopen, what do longer-term economic impacts look like? And we really feel like these need to be in the conversation and should be quantified if possible. You may have talked about liability. The federal government last week recently increased liability limits for spills at sea, which of course is less directly relevant to Coquitlam. But I wanted to put some spill costs up there so you can see that if there was a significant spill, there's a very high likelihood that costs in excess of the liability limits would fall to taxpayers, and both the provincial and the federal government have said this. It's also unclear who pays for a spill on the pipeline route. I believe that Kinder Morgan told Langley Township that they hold about $750 million in liability for pipeline spills, which is quite high. Although if there's a significant spill, for example, the Kalamazoo spill in Michigan, the costs are sitting at above $1 billion right now, and they're still rising. So that's an important thing to note, is that pipeline liability or liability for spills along the pipeline route is a little bit murkier. We really feel like, and particularly interveners in the National Energy Board who are looking at what kind of requests they might make, we really feel like there's more information needed about how a spill might impact jobs locally. The second study on this slide, I think, is the most relevant. A few years ago, the Washington State Department of Ecology did a study to look at how would a major spill along our coast impact the economy or along their coast. And they found that the direct cleanup cost would be about $10 billion for a major spill, and it could affect more than 150,000 jobs. And what we find is that there's actually a real lack of information about what might happen here and what that might look like here.
So how far along in your presentation?
Almost done. Am I hitting time pretty soon?
Well, you're a little over, but keep going.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to really quickly look at a couple of things. So one is the tourism sector. Some things we looked at the Deepwater Horizon as a case study, and if you're interested, I can send you more information on this, but important things to note are that reputational impacts are really, really important, and that small businesses are very, very vulnerable. Another thing to note, and I've got a report for you here, so I won't talk about this, is that property values are impacted by oil spills. They can be more temporary, they can be longer term. It depends on direct contamination and as well, again, reputation. And then just to conclude, I think particularly what our group feels, again, is that a real cost-benefit analysis is needed, and that economic risks need to be included in this conversation and included in the assessment process going forward, because the economic benefits and the economic risks are not equally distributed. Thank you.
Thank you. I have two people with questions so far. Councillor Lucicor.
Yeah, thank you very much. I've got quite a few questions, so bear with me, okay?
That's okay. I did a lot of information really fast.
You mentioned tourism. What is there about tourism about a pipeline? Where do you get the tourism from?
So a lot of, as you can see, well, when we looked at the Deepwater Horizon spill, tourism was one of the sectors. So that was the spill in the Gulf of Mexico in 2010.
That's tourists is a spill.
Sorry?
That's what would attract the tourism. Is a spill.
No, it hurts tourism. It hurts tourism.
Hurts tourism.
So that oil spills would hurt the tourism sector.
Yeah.
It hurts the ability to attract visitors, all of that. That's what we're just trying to quantify that a little bit.
Okay. And you said, so many jobs, and I'm all in favor of jobs. They're not, as long as they're clean jobs. Environmental damages. Nobody can really put a figure on environmental damages to a city or to any province, really. It all depends what happens, So, and you're saying that there's $10 million worth of taxes to British Columbia, and in Coquitlam be $250,000 a year. There was a major spill here in Coquitlam. That $250,000 a year would be peanuts.
It would, yeah, absolutely.
It costs us a hell of a lot more than that. So and then we're talking about you'll be using the colony farms to go through colony farms or Riverview lands or whatever it is. I really got concerns. And when you say a small spill, would you consider the one in Burnaby as a small spill?
I'm not sure how that would be classified. I wouldn't consider it a small spill. I'd consider it probably a small to medium size. But I think, in terms of the size of spills that happen, it's quite small comparative to the size of other spills, for sure. So I think they got relatively lucky in Burnaby.
Yeah, you mentioned also $750 million the federal government's putting up for spills.
That's not the federal government, no. That's the amount of liability that Kinder Morgan says they hold.
Liability, I think it's very, very low compared to what's been happening in the United States and other places.
Absolutely.
Valdez and things like that, they've still got problems with it, what I mean? So, and when you mention also consultants that did a study and, that it cost $10 million or something.
$10 billion,
all depends who hires a consultant, who
That
pays
was-
for the consultant, and what do you want the consultant to come back with a report.
Yeah, that was the Washington State government. It was a highly technical study that they did.
So you know what? I can see that things have to move along, but I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
What is the possibility
Yeah.
in here? That could be millions and millions and billions of dollars worth of damages.
Absolutely.
There's got to be a better way. Maybe maybe if a pipeline was put in, and there's a pipeline, and then there was a area in between, and then another pipe inside.
Well, and I
It'd be
think
very, very expensive, but that would give people a little more safety.
Well, and I guess the point that I'm trying to make, which maybe, the point that I'm trying to make is that there's significant environmental risks and health risks and all of that. There are also significant economic risks that I think need to be taken into consideration as well. So I agree with everything you've said, absolutely.
Yeah, so anyways, thank you for your presentation, but I myself really quite often think about it, just think to myself, the big oil companies spend millions and millions and millions of dollars building things, but when it comes to insurance and liability and everything else, they seem to run away from it. So those are things that I'm nervous about.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm quite nervous as well about that. I think liability is much lower than it should be,
Okay, thank you.
personally.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill?
Yeah, thank you for your presentation. And I'm glad it was very clear. When I first heard about your organization, I think your group or somebody put this in our in our mailboxes about assessing the risks of Kinder Morgan's proposed new Trans Mountain pipeline, and it talked about wanting robust and informed conversation about the project's risks and potential benefits. I thought, well, this is interesting that it's really wanting to dig into it, and then further information that I found out about your organization before listening to you. Indeed, when you sent out your promotional literature, it's to find information about the economic risks and rewards of Kinder Morgan's proposed Trans Mountain pipeline expansion. But then your actually application to speak here at the committee talked about just focusing on the risks of the proposed pipeline, and your presentation here just focused on the risks. So it seems to me that some of the earlier information led me to believe anyway that this was going to really just look to explore, but now you're focusing your initiative on opposing because of economic risks. Is that what you're doing?
Well, I think, yeah, initially, I mean, and we don't take a stance as CRED. I mean, we have significant concerns about the risks for sure, but we're not saying we're formally opposed, just a slight nuance. I think you're absolutely right that when we first started looking into this, we wanted to look at, well, what are the economic benefits, how are they quantified? And the more and more that we research, the more and more we realize that actually they're very small and that the risks are very large. And so when we talked about jobs and taxes, that was looking at what the economic benefits are and looking at the fact that actually they're quite small.
So you began, you put this organization together with at least 2 paid workers, you and then a board of advisors and a team, as just an exploratory body to look generally at what the pros and cons are, and you soon found out it was all going to be con. The con would outweigh the pro, or did you go in with a point of view to begin with that you were going to try to find stuff that opposed?
We went in with a concern about the fact that risks to other sectors of the economy weren't being discussed. So our initial advisors were in the tourism and real estate and hospitality and tech sectors, and we're saying, well, we want to know how this could impact us. What could the risks be for us? And
before I just talk about some of those risks and benefits, I just want to understand your organization a little more. So how did this come together? Where did the funding for this come from? I see that you're registered as a nonprofit association, but you're not a registered charity.
No, we're a registered nonprofit. We're consider ourselves a business association, so I should say we're very small and we're very new. Okay. So actually, up until quite recently, we only had 1 part-time paid staff, which is myself. And our advisors are all, much like any startup, are putting in a lot of time and bootstrapping. And initial support came from our initial advisors and members.
Oh, okay. So just a circle of friends who were interested in this. Okay, good. Okay, so thank you. It helps me understand where you're coming from.
Of course.
So in terms of the, one of your, according to the Vancouver Sun story of December 9th, you made a presentation of some sort that the Sun picked up on it, and talking about perhaps how there could be a potential for devaluation of property because of the oil spill and the oil pipeline. Now, we've had a pipeline running right through the heart of Blue Mountain, part of Coquitlam, for how many decades now? And we've seen a very high increase in property values consistently for many years, and no spills. So how do you account for that when you're focusing on the potential for devalued property, and we see evidence of decades and decades of rising property values with no spills?
Well,
which one should we?
So I think there's a couple things you're saying there. One, so the study that we did, which is right here, I've got a copy for you actually, looked at how spills impacted property values because we wanted to know what the risk of a spill would be to property values, and we found a few things. So first of all, in the past, historically, there's been no evidence that a pipeline impacts property values unless it spills. So if it doesn't spill, it doesn't impact property values. If it does spill, it impacts absolutely directly affected properties and also properties up to 1 kilometer away to a lesser extent and for a shorter time frame.
It doesn't take away any sort of unexpected calamity of some sort. There could be a little flood, there could be a fire next door, your property is going to be affected.
Yeah,
is this a short-term effect or a long-term
So
effect?
it's short-term, except in three cases. So effects on property values usually last about 1 to 3 years, we find, except for three cases. So one is if oil gets into groundwater. If there's groundwater contamination, the devaluation is likely permanent. If a foundation of a home is affected, or materially to a point that it needs to be bulldozed, then obviously that's a longer-term devaluation. And the third is when a pipeline gets a reputation as a leaky pipeline. So a reputational impact is if there's a pipeline that's spilled or leaked several times, then that devaluation along the whole pipeline route would likely be permanent. We do see that. One of the interesting things that may be happening in Burnaby anecdotally is that there's homeowners and business owners now that are starting to see along the proposed new route, they're having trouble selling their homes, they're facing issues, and I'm wondering if that's perhaps because it's a different ballgame now. Pipelines are so much higher profile than they have been in the past, and it's in the news every day, and so I wonder if there might also be reputational impacts because of the high profile of it too.
So following your logic and looking at potential economic problems caused by pipelines, are you suggesting as well that the existing pipeline should be removed?
We are, no, not at all. And again,
Why not? Why not?
well, so for us, when we were trying to look at the economic costs and benefits, first of all, we're looking at, weighing the cost-benefit analysis of a new proposed project. But in addition, they're two very different pipelines. So the existing pipeline, I'm sure you know somewhat about it, is that some of it gets diverted at Sumas to Washington State, some of it goes to the Chevron refinery, and some of it goes to the Westridge Marine Terminal. But right now, it provides a significant amount of gasoline for the Lower Mainland. The new pipeline would be a proposed diluted bitumen pipeline for export only. So it's a little bit, when you look at the economic benefits, it's a little bit different because it's for export only, so it's not for local benefit.
On the issue of economic benefit, you talked about the under $300,000 that Coquitlam would gain, but we live in a province that's in a country, and taxes are collected federally and provincially. So does your economic analysis look at the benefit that Coquitlam residents get from having all the revenue created in Alberta that goes to support federal government initiatives that we benefit by, and also goes to support Alberta government revenues, which is probably the greatest source of equalization payments in Canada, and that luckily Coquitlam doesn't have to get that, but several other parts of Canada have to get equalization payments, and that's been something that's kind of at the foundation of Canadian life for many decades now. So a lot of people in Coquitlam like that. So does your analysis look at those benefits?
Some of them, yes. I mean, because I only had 5 minutes here today, I had to be pretty concise with you. One of the things that we looked at was where corporate tax revenues are coming from federally across the country. And what we find is about 26% of all corporate tax revenues in Canada actually come from financial services. And another, I believe, off the top of my head, about 13% come from manufacturing. 4.2% come from oil and gas. So that's the share of corporate tax revenues that we're seeing from that sector federally.
So by saying that, you're saying that's not significant?
I'm not saying that it's insignificant, but I'm saying that I think often it's smaller than we think when we think about the role of the energy sector in Canada.
What are we supposed to do with that figure then? Discount it or say, well, that's important? I mean, so maybe it's not as big, but
I mean, I think
put
it's
that out there
helpful.
as if it's not an important figure because it's 4%.
Well, I think it's helpful to take things into context and understand where different sectors fit vis-a-vis other sectors.
So there is a national economic benefit to the oil and gas industry, albeit not as large as financial services.
Yeah, well, there
is provincial benefit that all of Canada enjoys, including provincial benefits of Alberta that all of Canada enjoys because of equalization.
Yeah, I mean, there's
local benefit in Coquitlam. Right?
I think what I'm trying to say is that there's also national benefit to sectors like tourism and tech and others, and I think it's important to look at how a project that benefits the energy sector might also impact other sectors like tourism and tech and real estate and all of those, and make sure that those risks are weighed and taken into consideration together.
Good, thank you.
I don't see any other questions. I want to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you very
And
much.
thank you for your time in coming.
Thank you.
Have a good day.
You too.
Okay. Next item, please.
Item 3 is a delegation from Marg Gordon, Executive Director with Community Volunteer Services for Seniors, regarding community volunteer services for seniors.
Welcome,
Hi,
Marg.
thank you. Thanks for having us here. Bruce Hanson, who's the president of Wilson Center Seniors, is unable to be here today as he had a very serious back injury. But in the back here we have Bill Ray, the president of Glen Pine, and we have Gordon Wilson, the president of Dogwood.
There's Gordon. Hi, Gordon.
Most of their board members, so on both sides. So we have a good representation for community volunteer services for seniors.
Thank you for coming out.
Yeah, thank you guys. Oops, what did I do?
There we go.
There you go.
Okay, so I just pressed that, right?
The arrow keys.
Oh, okay, here we are. Who are we? So who we are is we're a volunteer services organization that's been operating since 1977, so 17 years. When I wrote this slide 2 weeks ago, we were serving 174 senior clients. That's now up to 178. And we were utilizing 184 volunteers. That's now up to 187. We have 2 part-time personnel and 1 contracted 1 day a week position in the whole organization handling all the volunteers and all the seniors. Last year alone, we had 9,300 hours of volunteerism. And that's a conservative estimate. And even at $10 an hour, you're talking almost $100,000 worth of volunteer time. So what do we do? Have any of you heard of us before? Please say yes.
Yes.
Yay. Okay. So what we do is we offer support to isolated and homebound seniors. So these are seniors that would have no social contact if it weren't for our program. One of them is a grocery shopping program where we call seniors on a Monday, get their grocery orders, and then another set of volunteers goes and shops the orders on Tuesday, and the groceries are delivered to them. We have a visiting program for isolated and homebound seniors where they have a friendly visit once a week with a volunteer. We have a telephone reassurance program where we just give them a friendly call, see how they're doing, seeing what they're up to, and we have a awesome information referral service with all the other social services that are available in the area. And we sort of act as the concierge of sending people out to different referral services. And we have the Tri-City Leisure Connections that's held out of Glen Pine. And that's a once-a-week program for people with dementia or Alzheimer's, and it's absolutely amazing program to get them out and get them some social contact. So last year, our program stats were in the groceries, 3,500 hours of volunteer time. In the visiting, 4,500 hours. Telephone, 143. So as you can see as I go down the list, the office volunteers, the leisure connections, the volunteer at all our events. We just held an event last week, the annual appreciation tea for both the seniors and clients and their visitors and their volunteers, and it was amazing. We had 152 people showing up, and there was one lady in the audience, it was her 100th birthday, and we had another lady there that was 103. So that gives you an idea of the range of volunteers that we handle. But now the reason I'm here today is we need some help. We want everybody to know this program is a Tri-Cities program. Although we're situated in Port Coquitlam and we have been for 17 years, it's pretty simple why we're there, because we get free office space, free machines, free mail. Everything is given to us from the city of Port Coquitlam. But we are a Tri-Cities, so we handle Port Coquitlam, Port Moody, Belcarra, and Anmore. So the services are across all the 5 areas. So we just want to get the word out. We also have some bad news. We're not here to ask for money, so don't panic. But the bad news, oh no, I'm still on the same slide. The bad news is that we lost our funding from United Way. United Way has dropped all seniors outreach programs. So we're not the only one. There's 31 different organizations that have lost their funding. And it's 50% of our funding. It was $49,500 that we lost. Now, part of this reason is there's a new program in town called Better at Home. I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but I won't take a long time to describe it, but it's a provincial program where the province put $15 million into it, gave the money to United Way to manage and handle, and it's to run programs for grocery shopping, transportation, visiting, light housekeeping, and you can choose from the menu depending on who the lead agency is. Well, the lead agency in the Tri-Cities is Share, and they've been able to provide transportation and light house cleaning. They have not been able to provide the services for grocery shopping or visitation. United Way has chosen not to fund us again, so there's nobody that will be providing those services. And it's not that Share has chosen not to, they just don't have enough money. So to run the program just for transportation alone and for light housekeeping, they have used up the $100,000 that they get every year. So what we're doing to move ahead is, of course, we're writing grants like crazy, but so is everybody else in the world that has seniors programs. So we've written 12 grants so far. We've been successful in 3 small ones. I can't tell you any of the names of any of them yet because they haven't been announced. So we're getting some funding in to kind of help us bridge the gap. But grantors, or people who give the money out from grants, historically fund new programs. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we've decided that we're going to move ahead with looking at changing the name so that it really shows we're Tri-Cities, so we'll get more well-known. So in order to do that, we've also looked at forming a new board, so it has its own board, because we use Wilson Center right now as our parent company, which doesn't help give the message that we're Tri-Cities.
Okay.
Oh, am I done?
No.
Okay,
no.
so we're I don't know. We're looking at that. So when we say we're going to change the names, we thought about Tri-City Services for Seniors, and then we thought, well, for forming a new board, then the board should choose the name. There'll be at least 2 representatives from Coquitlam, Port Moody, and Port Coquitlam. So it's across the board representation, and hopefully from Belcarre and Anmore. And I already have some people that have stepped up from Coquitlam and Port Moody and Port Coquitlam, all willing to serve on the new board. And we plan to expand the services to Safeway at Sunwood Square, which I believe is that way. It's near here. It's near here. So we're going to run the same service. Although people in Port Moody and Coquitlam and Belcarre and Anmore can use the program right now, the grocery shopping, it comes from the Safeway on Shaughnessy. So we want to expand into another Safeway so there's not hours of time between people being able to get the groceries. So in the interim, with the loss of our funding, we lose it as of June the 30th. And what we're really scared about is having to close our doors. It's not about me as a part-time position. It's not about us at all. It's about these 175 seniors that aren't going to have a service. It's about the 184 volunteers that have a purpose in life. Many of our volunteers, 80% of our volunteers are seniors themselves, and many of them have come from the programs that they first had to avail and find themselves getting better. And many of them say that the depression of being alone at home and feeling like they weren't needed anymore has just lifted because now they're helping. So we have a possibility that we could lose the momentum. I've met with United Way many times, and they basically and said, will you top up the Better at Home program? Will you ask the province to top it up to fund these services? And they basically said, we don't have an argument until you do close your doors. And I said, well, then your argument is there's 175 seniors gone to residential care or somewhere worse. And there's 184 volunteers that no longer have a volunteer job to do. So the result is, with no funding from United Way, no funding from Better at Home, and no real plan that we can put in place that fast.
Yeah.
Now, we do have plans to put in place, like changing the board. We're looking at how to get revenue streams so we can come self-sufficient, but we need a bridge funding to get us over the next 18 months to 3 years, the same time it takes to get any business off the ground. So what are we here today for? We're here to ask that Mayor and Council send a letter to Premier Clark and the other government ministries that are involved to ask that the Better at Home program be revisited to take into consideration situations such as ours. There are other seniors outreach programs that are also closing their doors. 2 have already and many to follow. So we're just asking if you could see your way clear to what we do, the value of what we do, the amount of volunteers. One slide I did include, because I was trying to stick to the 5 minutes, is the number of people who use the services in Coquitlam are about 100. Of that 174. The number of volunteers from Coquitlam are, again, about 2/3. So Coquitlam heavily uses this program, and we just really would like your support. We have the support from Dogwood, and we have the support from Glen Pine, as you can see. And I just want to end with 2 short stories. One lady that we serve, she has multiple sclerosis so bad that all she has the use of is from here to here. So she has this little computer that lies on her chest. The volunteer that goes to visit her every week is her only touch with the outside world, other than Fraser Health come in every day to do their medical thing. And she talks using the computer like this, and she'd be one of the people who would no longer have this social contact. And we have another person that attends the Leisure Connections group, and I won't read the whole letter, but it's just amazing how this has made such a difference in his life. He's happy and joyful when he goes to the program. He can't wait to go. He's made new friends. And the benefit, too, of that is his caregiver, who takes care of him 24/7, gets that day off to go do what they need to do, like get their hair done or just go for a walk or whatever. So losing these programs is what gets emotional. It's very, very critical that we do everything we can not to. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for your presentation, and I've known about you, and I think you guys do a tremendous job. And I think the isolation of seniors, which you help eliminate, is an excellent thing that happens. There's a list of speakers here. There's going to be some questions. From my personal point of view, I think a letter is the easiest thing you can do.
Thank you.
I'd also say in my suggestion to the other council, they agree, would be to have the letter go to all MLAs. So it's just not to Christy Clark,
I
but
can move it that way.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. Thank you.
I really do think it should go to everybody.
I agree, especially the Minister of Health. And then, of course, Minister Coleman, who is housing, will end up with these people in residential care, right?
And our local MLA should be highlighted,
Perfect.
both sides.
Thank you.
But I have a speakers list, and I'll let them get to
Okay.
this. Councillor
Thank you.
Secor.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, volunteers are probably the greatest thing that ever happened to every community. We could not afford to run a city if it wasn't for the volunteers.
Absolutely.
We couldn't afford it. The price tag would be just out of reach. You know, so your budget is roughly about $100,000 a year.
Our budget is roughly about $100,000. The other $50,000 we raise ourselves through garage sales and teas and donations and different things. Yes.
Okay. Number one, to our Parks Recreation Director, casino money, if they're District 43, you can certainly apply for funding from the casino money, could they not, under this program?
No.
But we did apply under the new program that we want to start at Sunwood Square, so we're hoping that might qualify. Not for the whole amount of funds. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mr.
there's a grant. There are some eligibility issues with it, but that said, there is an application by this group for a spirit grant this year. All of it is underwritten.
Okay, you know, there's, I can see in our council chambers that we have 2 residents from, for sure, Maxine Wilson, that volunteers, and also Ray, the president of the Glen Pine, you know, that just lives around the corner here. And, you know, so, you know, volunteers are something that, you know what, how can we possibly lock the doors on the volunteers? I mean, the provincial government's got to be crazy to do something like that.
That's why we want you to write to them, because we're not quite sure. I think we were an unintended consequence.
Just in my own place, you know, see me after, and I'll support it financially.
Okay, thank you.
Very simple. And I'll tell you what, number one, you know, there's so many people that volunteer. For instance, you know, just in my own household, Sylvia, she's retired from her job.
I know, she's amazing.
Yeah, and she decided that after being a single mother for many years, raising 3 children, she decided she wanted to volunteer at Eagle Ridge Hospital. So she volunteers at Eagle Ridge Hospital, which is great. So, but she enjoys it, and she speaks very highly of the volunteers. And over a period of years, there is no city could possibly survive without the volunteers that we have.
I so agree.
So you know what? As a matter of fact, I'll tell you, I wouldn't even mind putting on a dinner for a fundraiser.
Okay, we'll talk.
We'll talk.
Because I know how you do your fundraisers, and that would be great.
Very, very successful, aren't
Yes, yes.
they? Okay, so you know what? I think we need to do something to get you going, because I'll tell you what, as you said, there's a lot of people that have no connection with the outside world. I step to you people, and it's the greatest thing that can happen. And I'll tell you what, I myself, for one, would never let it happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luke. Councillor Reid.
Mark, how many, nice to see you. We go back
Yeah, you too.
so many years. my
We've known
God.
each other for, what, 40 years?
Shh, we're
We
only
were
39.
10. We were 10 then.
With what POCO gives you, what do you think that would be in dollars?
$18,000. Not that I was counting it, but
No,
yeah.
that's great.
Yeah.
Great.
It's all awesome. So I know we save a lot by that.
Yeah, no, I like to hear that.
And that's not cash. That's like the free.
In
yeah.
kind,
Yeah.
but I just wanted to
Yeah.
know what they give you, because that would help. I too would like to see this continue. There's a lot of folks out there that don't have anyone to
He's
visit
coming
them.
aboard on
Yeah.
Okay, Luke.
I beg your pardon?
You coming aboard on the fundraiser?
No, I was there before you got there.
Councillor, just let her finish.
So what I would suggest, I have no problem with writing a letter, and I would ask probably Mr. Alueva to give us a hand with that, because that's sort of his department. And then I think we could also have a conversation about where you're going, and I gather that Parks and Leisure has a lot of information that we could avail ourselves of and move forward and see if we can step up to help them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Neill.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I was certainly taken with the part of your presentation that talked about the opportunities this provides for volunteers. Like Council Sikora, it's a terrible thing to waste. Just as you were talking, I thought, well, how exactly is the Better at Home going to work? And the provincial government website says that under the Better at Home program, seniors will have access to non-medical home support services such as housekeeping, grocery shopping, home repair, and everything like that, delivered through local non-profit organizations by volunteers and paid workers. So, do we know yet what the provincial government, and this is administered by the United Way, do we know yet how that's going to happen in the Tri-Cities area?
What we know is it's not quite working out the way they were hoping. What they've done is for transportation and for, not for transportation, for the housekeeping, they've actually had to contract it out to a for-profit company. So that in itself is difficult. The second thing is just the transportation alone, with the number of seniors that no longer drive or have anybody that can drive them, that's eating up the rest of their money, and they pay their volunteers for mileage, and they don't have any money left to increase the insurance on the Better at Home, so a volunteer can only drive 6 times a month without invalidating their ICBC insurance, so they're finding it very difficult. So it's not working with the funds that are available. It's just not working, and they can't even touch the grocery program. They can't even go there. And for them to recreate what we do, even if we handed everything over to them, which we were at different times talking about just to keep it alive, they couldn't run the program because they don't have any money. So, so it's very different. So I think Better at Home, what happened, and that's why this letter is so crucial, is we are unintended consequences of the BC government. I really feel that I don't think that they meant for existing programs to topple. I think they meant for them to be augmented, and that's exactly the opposite.
Yeah, good. And that's a very important bit of information for me, because
I know, it's mind-boggling.
it is mind-boggling. We're discombobulating.
Yeah, and so And that's part of the reason why we lost the United Way funding too, is because they said, well, we're not going to double pay for services. Better at Home already does that, but Better at Home does not already do. And every area where there's a lead agency in Better at Home, every single one I've checked with, have only been able to provide 2 services of the 6 they were asked to.
So that's the sort of information that should go into our letter. How?
Yes,
I was gonna-
I can provide that to you.
Please,
Yeah.
that would be good.
And just another point, what was I going to say? Oh, yes, about your fundraising efforts. It's too late for this year's Coquitlam Foundation grant cycle, but...
I applied to it.
Oh, did you? Okay. That's okay.
I'm not allowed to say, though, because they haven't announced. So I'm not allowed to say whether I was successful or not.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've applied. I think
On the committee, but
I've applied for every grant there is in
because the Coquitlam
even in
Foundation
Quebec.
now has a new
Yes.
omnibus fund
Yes.
that deals with a whole bunch of different
Yes.
community needs, and one of those community needs is seniors, so I was hoping that something had happened there.
Yes,
I'm
thank
not
you.
on the grants committee, so
I have a few people that I know from Coquitlam Council that have been keeping me tuned in.
good. Excellent. Well, that's
So no, it's a absolutely awesome program. Like I said, it came unexpected, so we don't have a plan in place for bridging the next 12 to 18 months. We're going to survive. We're going to keep our door open. I don't quite know how yet, but we're just going to keep plugging away. And I've got some newspaper ads we're going to be putting in, telling the public what's happened to see if maybe they want to do a few donations. But we got to get to the point where we're self-sufficient. That's the only way we're going to have long-term sustainability.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wilson.
Thanks. I think it's awful, and I met with Bruce and Diane Weston about
You did? Yeah.
6 or 7 weeks ago about this, and we talked a lot about what could be done, and one of the things we talked about was the Sendile program that Thrifty Foods has.
Yeah.
There's a chance
Yes,
to look at that.
Thrifty Foods has a program called Sendile, and for $5, which is only $1.50 more than our delivery service through Safeway, they will grocery shop. But Thrifty's is a smaller store with less range of things to choose from and more expensive than some of the other stores. So there's a large portion of our seniors that don't want to shop at Thrifty's. They don't even want to really shop at Safeway, but they'll accept Safeway because they like the T&Ts and the supermarket, or what's that, Superstore and Walmart. We just don't have the capacity to run around. But if we got some extra money or some kind of funding, we've talked to Better at Home. Cher runs the Better at Home program, and we've talked about, well, we could run this part of the grocery stream where we're sticking at one store, and Cher could do, in combination with their transportation program, they could do the going to T&T and going to Superstore and Walmart. So they're all things that are there. And another thing we've talked to Safeway about is if we got more volunteers, which we could easily do, that we could get them coupon cutting, and Safeway would then match the sales from Superstore and from T&T and from whatever Thrifty's, as long as they had the ad and it was the exact same thing. So we're moving towards an expanded, better service for our seniors, but kind of had to stop when we find it, I can't over-promise and under-deliver. I just can't do that. So right now I'm in the point where I can't promise anything to my seniors other than what we're just doing.
And then you'd mentioned the insurance issue that Cher's having.
We buy insurance for our volunteers. We just won't take a chance. So if they're driving somebody around, they're covered under our insurance policy. We always have.
Oh, good idea. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor Zerrillo?
Hi, thank you for coming in. Nice to see you.
Thanks. You too.
Just wanted to mention, yours is not the first that I've heard about this almost centralized model that the government of BC is moving towards, where they want to take some of the flexibility away at the local level and move it up to a centralized model and fund it down that way. And I was wondering, as part of the letter, if you could give us some information about how you feel, or what you feel about the effectiveness of moving to that kind of a model, because it's, like you said, it looks like there's some consequences happening at the local level that they haven't taken into consideration. And I know that there are many different agencies that they're really working towards centralizing. They think there's economies of scale up there. It'd be great if you could.
I could provide you with some information. It's a difficult. It's not tangible. It's almost intangible. But there are things that I could show what happens with a centralized model where autonomy is taken away and where it's tailored to an area. And I think the Tri-Cities is very unique and will really suffer with a centralized model. But that's my opinion.
Well, I think that would be great, because if we are going out to our MLAs,
Absolutely.
I mean, they need to know before it gets bigger than it already is,
Yes.
that it could have a real serious impact on the individuals we're trying to help.
And I'd be willing to attend with any of you if you ever wanted me to make a short speech, 5 minutes, like today.
Like today. So I'll go through the clerk. We don't have a mover and seconder yet on a.
I'll move so.
I'll second.
I'll second. And do you have basically the gist is they'll work with staff to create a letter? Okay, all in favor? None opposed? Carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I can't even tell you how much we appreciate this. Thank you.
Welcome. Anytime.
Now I'll take everybody out of the room so you can breathe.
Have some breathing room.
Just give it a couple seconds while people leave before we start the next item.
Well, we don't actually have.
Can we do direction in camera on this?
Okay, I can force
We need to talk.
We can talk about it in camera.
Yeah, add it to the OB there.
Okay.
When we get to there, we can add it as an OB.
We can ask. But I think we'd let staff go for the. But anyway.
Yeah, we don't want to discuss anything more. Okay, what next?
Okay, we just you carried us.
Youth Council report.
Yeah, we'll get.
Procedures to use.
Just a quick step.
Yeah, it's all too quick from youth to senior.
Okay, next item, please.
Item 4 is a report regarding the 2013-2014 Annual Youth Council Report. I believe we have introductory comments and then a presentation by the Coquitlam Youth Council.
Yeah, I'm just going to make this brief. I've got Tara Lind, who's our recreation program coordinator with us, and she's one of her portfolios is the youth programs. She's here today to introduce 3 members of our youth, and they have a presentation today for council on their 2014 youth report. Tara?
Good afternoon. So I'm going to introduce our members here today, and then I'll get out of the way and let them take over. So basically, we're here today to provide some highlights from this year's annual youth report, as well as to share with you some of the personal experiences they've had over the year with Youth Council. So you guys can move forward. First, we have Josh Lee. So Josh, you want to give a little... Okay. In addition to being part of our Youth Council, Josh took part in helping to plan this year's REACH Awards as part of Youth Week. We also have Alec Yu. And Alec's going to speak a little bit in the presentation to his experience as a member of the BC Youth Parliament. And we have Jaming Lee. And Jaming is our sole representation today from the West Youth Council. And she's part of a very interesting intergenerational initiative with Dogwood Pavilion that she's going to speak to as well. Okay.
I think we need one more chair.
You know what? I can move out of the way here and they can...
You'll need one more chair.
Slide in one more chair.
You want to stand?
We have extra chairs today.
Yes, we do.
Okay. No worries.
Well, we need them to actually sit for the webcast, for the microphones. Yeah.
Can you not see them if they stand then?
It says that you can't hear the audio.
Yeah, so we need you to sit where the mic is there for the audio. So who will be going first?
Jameen. Yeah,
Just ask you to speak into the mic, please.
Welcome, and thank you once again, and for the tremendous work that you guys do in the Youth Council and your volunteering time. It's greatly appreciated, so I will turn it over to you, and you guys can make your presentation.
All right, so
This is art. This is just a picture of youth enjoying the Poirier Youth Center at the monthly Urban Cafe that showcases youth talent in the local area. So music, poetry, improv, acting, that kind of stuff.
So just a couple things that we'll be covering today are the highlights of the past 2013-2014 year, our focus areas for the 2014 and 2015 year, updating the youth strategy, and then we'll have questions and comments. So this year, Coquitlam Youth Council has 38 members, which are split into two committees, one east and one west. Basically what we do, we discuss current issues in the community and provide feedback to the city on development and youth issues. We also plan events for the Youth Week, which is hosted in May. The Program Committee, a subcommittee, has 43 members, and again, we're split into two groups, one east and one west. The Program Committee plans events for all ages to gain practical experience and give back to the community. These include Halloween parties for preschoolers. There are youth center specialty nights like nachos, movies, and they also host a Thanksgiving dinner and a play area at the Teddy Bear Picnic.
And not only do we have the Youth Council and Youth Program Committees, but we also have a wide range of volunteers, youth volunteers in Coquitlam. So there are over 400 of us, and we contribute over 10,000 hours of service annually. And just new to this year, so 2013-2014, we started to introduce the idea of workshops for these youth volunteers so that it enhances what they can do when they actually volunteer. So we have things like face painting and balloon art and high five training and first aid training and resume writing. And also another youth leadership program that we have is called More Sports. So More Sports trains high school students to run after school programs for elementary school kids, and they are run after school, and they're a low cost program, and there are over 930 elementary school students that participate in this More Sports program, and there are over 150 specially trained youth leaders to run these sort of programs.
So as mentioned earlier, there's a Youth Week celebration that takes place in the month of May from the 1st to 7th. And during Youth Week, there's a Youth Reach Awards, Reach standing for recognizing efforts and achievements across the community and home. Basically, Jimmy and I had the pleasure of working on the planning committee, and we'll be talking about that later. Youth Council also hosted the Coquitlam Youth Fest. There were over 400 participants, and there was live music, games, free food. There were also bouncy castles, with one event at Pine Tree and one at Blue Mountain Park. The program committee also hosted eating contests and mini Olympics. Yes. There was live music events and sport tournaments as well.
Just slide the mic over.
Move it.
So I'm here to talk about my involvement with the BC Youth Parliament. And so the BC Youth Parliament is a mock parliament that's held every year in December during the winter holidays for youth aged, I believe it's 16 to 21. And basically it's a parliament that promotes political literacy, voluntary service, as well as networking through public speaking. And every single year, Coquitlam City Youth Council sponsors 1 or 2 members to go and attend this event. And this year I had the honor of being selected as the member to go and attend, and I was the representative for Coquitlam Burke Mountain. So I represented the ideas of youth in this youth parliament. And I got the honor of sitting in the provincial legislature in the very seats where our MLAs sit and really look at like the historic ceiling and all the different things, all the marble. It was extremely beautiful. And I got to meet...
One day you'll be sitting there?
We'll see. You never know, right? And I really got to meet a lot of people from like the interior of BC, all different parts from Metro Vancouver, and really get to network with them and share ideas, as well as debate issues. And all of our constitutional acts have to do with service projects with the community. So we got to, I really got to experience parliamentary debate. I really got to appreciate the democracy that we do have. And I came in there not really knowing a lot about parliament, about government, and not really having a lot of public speaking experience, but really being able to absorb all the advice from all these experienced Parliament people really helped me with all of that. So it really helped me gain insight on youth all over BC and the system that we have today. And another thing that we wanted to talk about was the Children and Youth Charter of Rights. And the city staff will be taking part. We've been invited to a visioning exercise for a Tri-City-wide Children and Youth Charter, and will be continue to be involved in the development of this project. And this right here is a picture of our Youth Fest held at Pine Tree Community Center. And as you can see, there's lots of interaction between the youth and the staff and the volunteers. And it's a really lively environment with live music, food, and games. And it was just a really fun time. And this is a picture of our voluntary services, an advertisement for it. None of this would be possible without all the volunteers that we do have in the city. And all the three of us are city volunteers, a part of the Youth Council. So we definitely think volunteering is very important in our city.
Yeah, and these are just a couple of city youth staff at the Poirier Community Center, and they're just getting ready for action because Youth Week is starting.
You're chill.
All right, and this is actually me and a buddy. We were adjusting it out at the Youth Fest. We were volunteering. Yeah. And this is just youth enjoying the youth center up at Poirier.
So, all right. So, focus areas for 2014 and 2015. So, as Josh mentioned before, he mentioned the Reach Awards and how he and we fortunately got to take part in the planning of the Reach Awards for 2014. And these were held at the Port Moody Inlet Center this year. And it was a really fun experience because we got to put in our input, so it was really by youth for youth, that kind of thing. And they really took in like what we wanted, from decorations to entertainment to even down to what the awards actually look like, and they looked really polished and professional. And so one of our focus areas for next year is Coquitlam will be hosting the Tri-City Youth Awards and Youth Reach Awards, and we just wanted to focus on making that, just as good as it was this year and better. So another thing is leadership development. So we want to continue to expand the More Sports program and expand our over 150 currently trained youth leaders. And we also want to offer more workshops for the volunteers, as I mentioned before, and to recruit more volunteers to add on to the 400. So.
All right. So as part of civic engagement, we would like to continue to support the recruitment and retention of youth council and program committee members. We would also like to increase youth council's interaction with city council. Community-wise, youth council will continue to support the Youth Week and Youth Fest activities. We would also like to focus on increasing after-school programs for youth, not only at recreation centers, but also in schools.
So along with the community engagement aspect of it, as Tara mentioned earlier, I was part of a event that Youth Council West hosted at the Dogwood Pavilion, and it was our senior tablet and smartphone event. And this event allowed us youth to teach seniors who wanted to drop by the Dogwood Pavilion with their tablet or their smartphone.
I could use that help.
Yeah, you can come here any day.
Yeah.
And we answered any of the questions they had with troubleshooting their device, or if they wanted to, learn how to upload a photo onto Facebook, something like that. And this was a really successful event. And a lot of the seniors there appreciated our help. So we wanted for 2014 and 2015 to expand to not just in Dogwood Pavilion, but also down to the east where Glen Pine is as well.
So moving on, as youth representatives in our community, we believe that our voice should be heard. And what we want to do is to expand our advisory role to the city departments, and us being accessible to provide our opinion on neighborhood development projects and other youth programs. So a great first start has been Coquitlam's planning department coming to Youth Council and to present their neighborhood development plans. So Youth Council would like to be included in more decisions that will ultimately affect the youth, which includes our voice in updating the Coquitlam Youth Strategy. So I'll be talking really quickly about the youth strategy. The youth strategy is a document. It's kind of like the city constitution for the youth, and it's designed to guide the city in decisions pertaining to us and focusing on promoting the health and well-being of young people such as us. And in 2015, the city will be evaluating the progress of the current strategic decision. And prior to review, the city will identify some best practices that youth strategies that other municipalities and other youth organizations have had going for them. We would really, really love to involve youth in this process just because youth culture is a really, really dynamic thing. It changes month to month, and trends come and go, whether they're positive or negative or neutral. They're things that only youth can have a really good input on. So we would like to be involved more in creating this youth strategy and be able to visualize the best possible current direction for us. And prior to revision, the city will conduct a youth survey to assess the changing needs and reflect the true opinion of young people.
Okay, so this is just a photo of participants at from the Children and Youth Center Children and Youth Charter Visioning exercise at Pine Tree Community Center, and a lot of students were involved with giving them their input in the session.
So thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Well, no, thank you for your energy, your volunteering, the time that you put in. This is my 9th year in council, and when I first started on council with the youth and council and the growth in youth council, the volunteering, what has predecessors to you and you have continued the growth and the expansion of the youth council. And I think the other issue that was raised a couple of years ago is having the youth and the seniors interact with each other to build that bridges between those two groups and help each other out. I think that's fantastic what you're doing, and that group there. How many of you will be back next year, or are you all graduating this year?
We'll be back.
I'm graduating.
You're graduating. So you'll be the MLA in a couple of years. Okay. It's great to see that continuity, and I loved your presentation. We've got some questions. I think one person for questions, but I wasn't able to make it to the Reach Awards in Fort McMurray this year. I was disappointed. I've come to many of them over the years, and I know you had a mock sort of parliament session here in Coquitlam prior to so it is good to see the youth disengaged. And just to let you know that one of the things we've done, my committees, we've added youth to our city committees. I'm on the Multiculturalism Committee. We have a youth member. On the Environment Committee that I chair also, we have a youth member. So all our committees, we want to get that youth perspective into our committees and into our cities. It's another voice that doesn't get represented enough in our areas. And I'm glad to see the planning in other areas that you're eager to get involved. So we need that energy. So I have a question from Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's a great program. You provide a lot of service. Matter of fact, Council May Reed and myself were, I was a mayor then, we opened up the first youth center in Coquitlam. It wasn't much of a center.
It was better than what they had.
We had nothing, so we built that to start with. Now you got a much nicer one. But anyways, and it grew. It was great. And I hope you keep growing with it. And if you ever want to sit in Ottawa in the Parliament building, they have also the youth training program for different students, the different MPs take into their offices and then have a discussion in the Parliament building. I can arrange that for you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and thank you for the good work that you've done, and all the students that are volunteering and helping out with you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For your time.
Okay.
We're done.
Well, not quite. Not quite.
We get to the OBs.
We got the OBs.
Oh,
Yeah. So what's our first?
So our first other business item is related to auxiliary firefighters. That's from Councillor Sikora.
Okay, just before we move on, just 1 second, Councillor Sikora. I'd like to make a recommendation, you can speak after, Council, that this be, since there's probably personnel and legal issues with this, I'd like this to be moved into closed for discussion. What I'd like to have is I see the auxiliaries are here. I'd like to have them a chance to be the first item in closed to be discussed, have them also come in and present in closed, and then have the fire chief present in closed. I do think that this should be in closed. Councillor, I want to hear it, but I think that's the best forum for it. And so I'll...
I think it's a good idea. That's what I was going to suggest. But they've been waiting here for quite a while. I think it should be the first item in executive
That's what I
item.
said. It'll be the first.
And I think that also there was a union from the fire department that was invited. So I'd like to see that the union first, then the fire chief second, and the auxiliary third. To make presentation. That's not all together, all one at a time.
I think we'll have the auxiliaries first, and if the union wants to be for that procession, then we'll have the fire chief by himself. So I think that would be the way to do it. So we've got a couple of auxiliaries, but John.
Yeah, sorry, I think I need to wade in. I don't think this issue concerns the fire union at all. With all due respect, I don't think they should be involved in this conversation.
Okay,
at this point.
But the only reason I mentioned it because I had a phone call to say that the fire chief was invited the union to this meeting. So if that's the case, then you know what? I'd like that to be heard. But if it's not the case, and I really agree with our city manager, the fact is that this has got nothing to do with the union.
Well, I think that's probably the best way to do it. I don't know if there's any other comments from other. I don't see any. No, I think we'll just do it with the auxiliaries first.
Yes.
Then the police chief.
Fine.
The fire chief, not police chief, the fire chief, sorry. And then we'll deal with that. We'll do it the first item in closed. And so we'll move on to our next OB item.
OB item 2, also from Councillor Sikora, related to 1550 Hartley Street, Amalgamated Transit Union.
Okay, we have a question from Council Staff.
I have a question.
Yeah.
And the question is, if the union wants to speak, I will always hear the union as well.
Is there a need? I'll ask for Troy.
We actually came to listen today.
Okay.
So you do not want to speak? Okay, thank you very much.
So, thank you for showing up. Sorry.
We just want to make sure.
Yeah, just making sure. Sorry about that. Okay, we're moving on to the next item. Thank you, gentlemen.
Other business item 2 relates to 1550 Hartley Street, the Amalgamated Transit Union. This is Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. I brought this one up because I got a phone call from the president regarding, and also the gentleman that owns the building. He has this union people moved into his office, and all of a sudden you get an inspector going in there and get a notification that they have to move in 90 days. And I think that that's something that the council member make the decisions, not inspector. I think the inspector can make a comment. What bothers me is also what I got from these people, that this inspector went to a secretary in that building, rather to the owners or the president. And those are things that really, really concern me. Of chain of events, it'd be like me not going to the engineer, the head guy, but to one of the people at the desk and tell them I'd like to have this done. I'm sure that he'd be calling me and saying, just a second, we have a chain of command in here. I think the proper way of doing it. So those are things really bother me, but I don't know why this thing doesn't fit, and how can we make it fit?
Okay. Just for some information, Councilor Sikora, I've also talked, and I've known the owner of this business for a number of years, quite a long time actually. And so there has, the inspector that went in there was doing the job because she was looking for the business that was previously there, hadn't done a business license, and went upstairs and found out that there's a new business there that didn't have a business license yet either. And under the regulations that we lay out by council, they don't fit. Generally, there's a 30-day period to have them move out. She worked and gave them a 90-day period. Now, this is before us, but I talked to the owner of this, and there's two choices he has, just for council, is either a spot zoning or a temporary use permit. And at that, he needs to apply for one of those two, and then council will consider it. So everybody can weigh in on this, but I don't know what we are. I know the issue is being dealt with, but staff have done what they're supposed to do in following our bylaws set out in our zoning. So if we're going to,
But, again, again, if I could say, the fact is that, you know what, I remember in 1972 running for council. The fact is that, you know what, McDonald's wanted to come to Coquitlam, the zoning bylaw, the sign bylaw didn't meet. Denny's wanted to come to Coquitlam, the sign bylaw didn't meet as far as the inspector was concerned. So I changed the bloody bylaws.
Well, Councillor Sikora, the owner, the owner, and I know him, and I feel for him, because the reality of this situation is the real estate company that he used to find the people didn't do their due diligence and put a tenant in there that didn't meet the zoning. And so I feel for the owner, Precision Locksmith, and the situation that they're in. And I think that we need an application from them so that we can make that decision at council as to whether we grant a spot zoning or temporary use permit rezoning. But that has to be, that has to be an application.
I agree with it. The fact is then the inspector should have said to them, here's what we can do, instead of just giving a 90-day removal notice.
Well, I'm just going to go. Okay. Chris?
So Councillor Nicholson and I went and met with the group there, had a look at the facility, had a look at all of the other sort of offices in that area, heard from them, and there's no parking issues. They rarely have a lot of people there. There's a ton of other non-conforming uses in the area, not that two wrongs make a right, but so our suggestion was to ask staff to figure out a way to make it work, sort of like what you're saying, whether it's a spot zoning or something. But our opinion was that it'd be great if we could figure out a way for them to stay.
I agree with you, and I'd like to see this work, but I think they have to make the application. So, because staff is bound by our regulation we put forward. Craig?
So they can apply for a spot zoning.
Yes,
which basically, so they don't then become non-conforming. It becomes a sort of a zone within a zone. Then is that correct? Is that sort of the way that it would be set up?
I would let Mr. Randit.
Right.
What we're referring to is a site-specific text amendment to allow for this specific use at this specific site.
Only.
Just allow it right there.
Okay. So the concern I have is just this morning, like 20 minutes before the meeting, I had a call from a resident or a former resident who has now brought his business back to Coquitlam, and his story is very similar. He comes to the counter, is told that yes, it looks like this is going to be fine. He asks for it in writing. Before he makes the purchase, he's told there'll be an $85 fee to do the application, but he's told it's pretty much everything is fine. He's there with his realtor. I believe you may have actually spoke to this person. Now, and I'm going to leave out names and address because this, just at this point. But just to sort of say, I mean, this case is starting to sound like the one that we're talking about now. And he comes and he says, well, I'm on the wrong side of the street. If I've been on this side of the street, I can do it. And he's running a business, and he's got two other businesses that are sort of similar in the same block, and it's down in the schoolhouse area. And I'm thinking, I mean, what's going on here? Is it not information at the counter? He comes in to do all of his paperwork, and then suddenly he's told, well, it doesn't look like your business is conforming, but you'll have to take out a business license before we can even tell you. And it's just starting to sound like there's a lot of rigmarole going on and a lot of red tape.
Do you want Mr. Randit?
Same thing.
Just Mr. Randit.
Yeah, just on the new one, I thought, well, it's quite coincidental as well getting that call today. But I understand that the proponent came into the building department and was applying for some internal renovations associated with their business. Hadn't applied for business license yet, but it is a process that we do go through when you apply for business license, that we do review that it conforms to the zoning bylaw, your use in the area. So that's part of the process. So when they were suggested to apply for a business license, that would allow a referral to development services, who would review the zoning, make sure that it's applicable for that zone. So that hasn't happened yet. So all we have is sufficient information about what his use is, and our staff was getting a call back later today to further explore.
But again, we have a Coquitlam resident who now is bringing his business from Burnaby back to Coquitlam, and he's hitting a sort of wall of one department telling him one thing, one telling him another, and at the end he may be caught up. in a zoning, potentially in a zoning issue as well, after he's now made the investment in the property. And it's a very similar thing in a similar area and same type of thing, that business is compatible, is sort of similar to what's already there or what has been there in the past. And you know, he's now being told that we may require text amendment, may have to go to public hearing, and you know, he's going through the whole thing. So,
but I'll just go back to Mr. Ranch, as he said they don't have a lot of information yet. So it's Mr. Ranch.
Yeah. Through you, Your Worship, that's correct. You know, through that process of reviewing the business, when the individual applies for a business license, they outline what they do, and then staff review that in context of what the allowable uses are in that zone. So that hasn't taken place in a formal way. So officially, we've been told what it is, and staff have given the initial reaction. However, you know, I think we should go through that step, and there is avenues to pursue if it is not a permitted use to bring it before council. An applicant can apply for a temporary use permit or for that zoning text amendment.
but you know, I thought that we had reduced our number of zones. We reduced our number of businesses.
They haven't passed that.
It hasn't passed. But in case that goes through, is that going to sort of eliminate some of these issues? Because I think what we've got is a technicality that the business is, you know, it's not like he's got some, you know, industrial business. So I'm just wondering, is this something that we can expect to sort of alleviate through a process down the road?
Okay, I guess we're getting into two areas. We're dealing with one issue, and we're getting into a second issue with another.
Yeah.
So I mean, but I would like to just get back to the original issue, and so I'll let Mr. Randish just to finish off. I've got other speakers. I got to.
Yeah. So just in terms of the current the Amalgamated Transit Union, the zone is or the property is currently zoned M9 light industrial, which permits all types of industrial uses, but only two commercial uses, which are industrial office and trade schools that are related to you know, an industrial use on the site, like warehousing and storage of equipment. So you know, in this case, I don't know that it's one department or another telling different things. I think we're all saying the same thing, that it's not an allowed use in this zone. However, there are the two opportunities to address that: the temporary use permit application or the zoning spot text amendment, which in preliminary discussions with Mr. Kevin Jewell, Precision Locksmithing, I think there's some interest in applying for that zoning text amendment.
But if this were to proceed through with what we're doing with the proposals on the zoning and the you know, the consolidating of zones, would they all fall in?
So relative to the industrial permit, industrial zoning review, you know, there's an intent to consolidate the zones and to definitely create more flexibility of use. So that is what our intent is through that process. In this case, I don't think that it would affect this property.
Wouldn't on this one.
So, you know, you'd be going to we do have a commercial zone that will benefit a lot of properties along anyway, not in this area. So.
Well, I know we received an email to that effect that staff replied and said it would be non-compliant in either the existing zone or the new zone.
And the other one that I raised might be. So I'm just, that's where I was going, was would the temporary get us to a point? It wouldn't resolve that either. Okay.
So yeah. So May.
Well, we're walking down a very steep and ugly cliff. Right now we have rules in place, and once we break one here, and we break one there, and we break one here, and we break one there, we might as well not have any. So my solution is, first of all, what stupidity is there at a counter if you're going to come into Coquitlam that you get all this information and you run out with your friendly neighborhood realtor, because I'd be ready to hang you up if I spent hours and hours finding a place for this lovely client who's going to do just this, and then to come back and find out that, oh, but if I didn't apply for a business license yet, only because I didn't know if I could find a space, and then I have to apply for the business license, and then I find out, oh, there's stuff in there that I can't use that other counter told me. This is ridiculous. I thought we spent not millions, we spent a lot of money on cutting red tape and getting rid of stupid rules, And that was my name for the whole venture, and it is stupid rules. And this one just jumps right in the pot, folks. If someone's coming in to move a business to Coquitlam, I would expect someone to have just common sense, plain old garden variety common sense, and say, well, gee, here's the rules here, but when you apply for a business license, we're also going to ask you column B questions. And maybe you better answer them before we tell you and your realtor to go out and spend 6 weeks looking for a spot. And this is just, I'm actually embarrassed. No, you're in the chair, I've got the floor. This is just plain stupid. So for me, if we want to talk about this particular case that we're on or any others, I want to go in camera because I want to know what the ramifications are of starting to let this person do this and this person do this before we find ourselves in a bag we can't get out of. So I'm perfectly willing to look at anything that's reasonable and logical, but we need to have some really good discussion about this because we're not making a lot of sense whatsoever.
Thank you, Councillor Reid. Did you have Mr. Ranich?
Well, just, Your Worship, just, realtors and prospective purchasers and VCs do come to the counter regularly, and they do ask staff, questions relative to. It's definitely concerning that apparently there was some miscommunication or information that wasn't provided that's led to this purchaser moving forward. It's something that we're going to be looking into. We do have a comfort letter process, which is probably the $85 reference there, which does allow for kind of a formal review. It's not just the front counter that it does allow.
And I think that's something that May talked about.
We need to redo the process, and maybe we can have a talk about that.
In close.
You got it.
The other issue, we're coming back down to the one that was raised as amalgamated.
And I'll move it to close to discuss what the ramifications are.
Okay, I still have Councillor Sikora on the.
May is absolutely correct what she's saying. I mean, it's got to a point where this body looks after this, and he's going to study, and then there's somebody else going to study, then there's somebody else going to study. To apply for a business license before you can find out whether you qualify in that area or not, then they get the money back from the business license if they apply and they don't qualify.
No. Mr. Radnich?
Your Worship, that was what I was trying to address with comfort letter. You don't have to apply for business license to get a comfort letter. You can go with a comfort letter and get that, also get that comfort that it is a use that is permitted in that zone.
Okay.
Anyways,
do you have to pay? Do you have to pay for that comfort letter?
Yes, you do. The $85 is.
Well, that's ridiculous.
But it is something that you can fall back on. It's not just a discussion.
In camera.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I think.
How bad can it get?
Just 1 second, Councillor Sikora. Mr. Olivier?
I'd like to just draw a little bit on my own background in the area. There's a lot of inquiries taken by email by the front counter without any $85 charge. It's a very high-level perspective. When it's a clear cut, yes, this one applies, it's fine. When there's a gray area, we'd still do a review. But quite often, purchasers, VCs, business, they want something in writing, do a comfort letter. There are many ways that an inquiry enters the city. It can come into a sign bylaw, and someone will put a new sign for a new business. Oh, you have a business? No, I don't. Okay, let's check it out. There's also a building permit. So there's a lot of places. So the idea was to bring all those together and to ensure that there's a fairly streamlined approach to anyone coming into the city for a permit or a new business, and that there's some work being done on that. And some of that was captured in some of the previous process improvements, but certainly there's an opportunity to always do that better. So, but it is quite often we get businesses doing something different than they told us. Okay, so there's a variety of things that occur. So they'll tell us by email they're fine uses. Okay, they're fine. They put in they go and they buy the property, then they give us the request for a business license. It's different from what they told us, and now it doesn't fit. So there's a variety of different things that happen. Very dynamic process, and admittedly, Coquitlam's done very well in terms of consolidating and expanding zones, but you're hitting a bit of a moving target. So I think we need to do that better, but there's a lot of nuances to that process. Certainly could improve.
Okay, May?
Well, it's really easy. You get a great big letter. You can do it in bold on a computer. Even I know how to do that. That says, do not rely on the information printed here. Do not go out and lease yourself a place. Do not move in. Just until you've applied and paid all these big funds, which I think is ridiculous, which we can have a conversation about. But this is just foolish. We have a tourism guy and an economic development guy running around trying to bring businesses in. I'll tell you what, if I walked in here and I was dealing with Mickey and Minnie, I'd be gone so quickly, I'd never be back. This is just really embarrassing.
So we'll move this rest to closed. So all seconder to that? Seconded by Craig, and we'll just move the rest of it, as May suggested, into closed. So, and I think on the other part for Amalgamated Transit, I think we've been in discussions. I've had discussions with them, and I think staff have had
Want to
discussions.
move it to close?
Yeah, but them applying for the spot zoning or.
Maybe not.
Yeah. So, seconded by Craig. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Next item, please.
Third other business item relates to parking tickets. This is Councillor Sikora.
You know, one night I got about 9 calls, about 9:30 at night. Here's these volunteers at our Coquitlam Center. The parking lots are full. Town Center. The parking lots are full. There's nowhere to park. So they parked around the curb. Guess what? Each one of them got a parking ticket, and they're volunteers. And guess what? So one of the volunteers approaches the guy that's writing the ticket, and he says, "Well, I'm just dropping off some bags of baseball bats and gloves and duffel bags full of stuff, and then I'm going to get a parking spot." He says, "Well, you should have dropped it off here first. Go and get a parking spot about 2 or 3 blocks away, walk down." I wonder if those duffel bags would have been there. Maybe they may have not. So, you know, to me, it's again volunteers. These guys are volunteers. They're coaches. They're volunteering kids. You know, so is there any reason why we can't give them a warning ticket? Is there something wrong? Is there some kind of disease or something to where, or is it a money grab for the city? Because that's exactly what it is. Just grab money, write tickets. And you know something, to me, these people are volunteers.
Okay, we got the issue. So I don't have. So are you saying that our bylaws shouldn't write tickets in the park?
No, I'm saying that, you know what? First time around, write warning tickets. What's wrong with hanging 9 or 10 warning tickets instead of $50 tickets?
Well, we'll just Mr. Bradfield, do you have a response?
There's a lot of volunteers getting kicked in the teeth.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. The situation that Councillor Sikora is referring to, we did do an investigation into it. Just for Council's information, Town Centre is an ongoing challenge, as Council knows, in terms of parking. There's limited parking. There are often large sports undertakings happening there, and it is difficult. We have adopted a process, and in the past, when we put up new no parking signs, we've given temporary warnings, but they've been in place now permanently for quite some time. In the particular situation at issue here, the vehicles were parked at the end of the drive aisles. So there's a lot of vehicles parked sort of horizontally, and they were parked sort of perpendicular or vertically across from that, which made it a safety concern. Staff in the town center area will issue tickets, but we will give warnings, and if we see that people are loading or unloading, we'll give them time to load and unload. All of the tickets that were issued and the time in question, they were stationary vehicles parked at the end of the drive aisles. There was nobody coming and going from the vehicles. So our bylaw enforcement officer said he issued the tickets. There were multiple vehicles parked at the end of every single one of the drive aisle. The lots, I guess, had been full when the event started. There is additional parking up in one of the upper parking lots, but it does take 5 minutes to drive up and walk back down, and some people are opposed to that. We do always try, if the situation warrants leniency, somebody is dropping off there at the drop-off area, we'll certainly give people time, as long as they're not abusing the situation, to unload the balls and reload them, or whatever the case might be. But these were stationary vehicles. They hadn't been moved in some time. Nobody was coming and going from the vehicles. It was clear that they were parked there. So we do have some photos available if council would like to see them, but that was what was observed.
Councillor Sikora?
This was at 9:30 in the evening when everything was over and they were going home. That's when the tickets were being issued, or 8:30.
So the car had been parked there for a while?
Yeah, but you know what? Okay, tell me, they're parked in a spot that they shouldn't have been. So what would have been wrong with a bylaw enforcement officer hanging a warning ticket? No, but it's got to be a $50 ticket. What's the difference? You tell me. You were illegally parked, and what would have been the difference between a $50 ticket or a warning ticket? What? Is there harm in it? I don't think so.
Typically, the city doesn't issue warning tickets
It's
for
a
parking
grab.
violations where the signage is clear that there's no parking permitted.
You've got your head as strong about this violation. You know what? There's many things. The RCMP catch violations every day of the year and every minute of the day. How many times an RCMP officer makes a decision, I'm not going to give you a ticket, I'll give you a warning ticket. Do we ever put warning tickets out? I bet you we never issued a warning ticket in the city because it's a money grab. $50. That's what it is, just a straight bloody money grab.
So you're saying they shouldn't enforce parking tickets?
No.
So you're saying a warning ticket, but
In
how many
this
times
case-
should you give a warning
In
ticket?
this case, it was one isolated case where the town center park was full of, or the stadiums were full of nowhere to park.
Except for the upper parking lot.
Nowhere to park. So they did the wrong thing, no question about it. And yeah, if they're there the second time, he's got the license plate number, oh, you already had a warning ticket, so this time I'm gonna hang a ticket on you. It'll be different, but no, right off the bat, it's $50 because we're money hungry in this city. We're gonna hang a ticket on everybody that drives by or even winks at you. I mean, why about that stupid bylaw that we have that if a guy drives over the curb, he'll get a $1,000 fine? We dealt with it 2 weeks ago. You had it, you voted on it.
Driving over the curb?
I was the only guy who voted against it.
I have no idea what he's talking about. Anybody else in this item? Seeing none, thank you. Next item, please.
Next item, other business 4, relates to emergency measures in relation to floodplains. This is Councillor Reid.
Thank you. This is just, I guess, direction or a bit of conversation with respect to the letter that we received on that our grant was not approved. Now, I sit on this great big long name, Flood Protection Committee, and I have real concerns with this because the way that climate change or the environment or a bunch of piddled off angels somewhere keep bringing floods and pestilence and everything that's occurring these days, I just think that I think it's wrong that it was downloaded to us in the first place, but the fact that it's downloaded to us, I am really concerned that we won't be completing it this year, and I'm wondering if you are, or is it just, we've just decided not to. Can we apply for the grant after it's done? Can we write to the province and say, we think that this is serious enough that we need to get on with it this year?
Through your worship, step by step. If we completed the works, we cannot apply for the grant after work.
Yeah.
That's the bottom basic rule. As to what we can do.
How much is the grant
We're applying for?
that we applied for that we didn't get?
I'm sorry, I don't have it.
Oh, okay. So it was it like $100,000 or was it like 10,000?
I don't know. Nevertheless, we can still complete the design, and we can do some work that would mitigate the risk. What is important to understand, though, is that obviously, aside from the fact that the sooner we get the work done, we are better off. But if we cannot get this work done today or next year, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's going to be any harm to the city. It's really the question of risk tolerance, because there is a certain probability of having a certain magnitude of flooding, and that flood doesn't happen every year. We have a flood management plan, and in fact we are.
So you're happy with the way things are
No,
You're
no,
not
no.
happy, but
No,
you're,
I'm
it's
not
acceptable.
happy, but we are doing the best what we practically can.
And that's acceptable.
I believe it is.
Okay, that's good. Then I had another one. I'll just bounce around. I had a few. This is to do with the letter from Richmond on the railroad crossings, and I wonder if you've seen it and if our engineering will just take steps and let us report back to us.
I'm well aware of this letter. We fully support the content of the letter. We were participants in the process leading to this regulation.
Okay.
And we are sending our own letter with the same comment.
Okay, thank you very much. And what else did I have? I had
Board of Variance.
Board of Variance. Oh, I had one more emergency measures one, but I'll go to the Board of Variance one, and this is for someone from planning. Ian, I guess that's you. Do we not send a letter? There's a Board of Variance one coming, making a lot that is obviously very wide, but not so deep, and they're looking for a 5-meter variance in their setback, which is going to affect the neighborhood. So do we have a nice big, I have difficulty. If you look at where the house is set back on the other ones, these guys might be shaking hands through their bathroom windows.
I'm not even sure.
Yeah, come on up.
So I just want to know if we report through to the Board of Variance and tell them why we're opposing this, not just because, or are we opposing it?
Through you, Your Worship, it's something that I would need to get back to Council on just to look at it specifically.
Well, instead of getting back to me, get something to the Board of Variance for tomorrow.
Sure.
Because I think this is not right.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's that new housing application?
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I read through that one.
I read through that one also, but I do know generally that building permits and that planning does go to those and make their comments known.
That's correct.
You're there, so make sure our comments are known, because 5 meters is a lot. They say that they can't build a livable house.
5 to 2?
Excuse me, look, the lot is very wide, so maybe they'll have to make the house wider instead of deeper.
Yeah, that's correct, Your Worship. Our staff do attend those meetings, and we will provide input.
Okay, because I have consideration about that.
My only question on that one through to Mr. Ranch, sorry, can I ask you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Is, I thought the Board of Variance was for existing housing and hardship. And so I don't know how you could go a new housing application even to the Board of Variance. I just find that, Mr. Aloeva.
Again, just my previous role. It's up to the board to determine what hardship is. That's part of the challenge of the legislation. It's also the board is fully independent. We'll normally raise concerns around neighbor compatibility in that, but it is up to the board to decide what hardship, how hardship can be interpreted, and it's an entirely independent decision-making body, as you know.
I just didn't think that new housing application would be
Is a hardship, exactly. Okay, thank you. And my last one was to do with the letter that we received from the province regarding earthquake preparedness consultation. This is the Mr. Renteria, who's coming up from California's Office for Emergency Services. I'm wondering if there's a place for council in here, because I am particularly interested in this. I'm probably the only one here who's taken all these courses, and then when we had a report up here, there wasn't really much for council to do. And so where this loses itself, and there was actually a good program on preparedness, about 6-8 months ago, coming from California. Now this is, of course, common sense, so it's sort of lacking sometimes around here. But when you're a city councilor and an earthquake happens or something happens, you won't believe how many of your neighbors will actually phone you, because they're going to think that you know something. What should they do? I mean, they probably should know what they do, but in a case like this, they don't. So in all the courses I took, the obvious fire and police and emergency folks were primary response, but there was always jobs or places for city councilors to go should they be able to get there or not, and there were always things to do. I don't think that we've ever had this I don't think that we've ever had anything prepared like that. So I'd like to answer some of these questions. that we've been asked. I don't know whose bailiwick this falls under. Is it yours, engineering, or yours, Mr. DeMont?
Well, it's Greg Kenya, our emergency program manager. He reports through Wade, and Wade reports through me. So there are there are earthquake sessions that are upcoming, and the mayor, I believe, was invited to a session. But we can look at whether there's an opportunity if the rest of council is comfortable with Councillor Reid attending as well. I'm not sure.
Well, and maybe other councillors want to, but we really need to get involved in this because it's a coming.
With respect to the role of council under BC Emergency Management Program, you're the policy group, so if there's ever a large disaster and major resources need to be called upon or a state of local emergency needs to be declared, then we call upon council to do those things, but you're kind of at the high-level policy decision-making, not the day-to-day operational emergency preparedness stuff.
But council needs to know all about, we'll never get the technicalities of it, but they need to know the processes so that they're comfortable with making decisions should it ever happen.
And we can get some information to council in that regard. We do have an emergency program bylaw that defines the role of
well, I want to be, as a city, I'd like to be included in everything there is about this.
Yep.
That's it. I'm done.
Thank you. Is that our last item?
It was.
Can I have somebody move
Move
adjournment?
adjournment.
Second.
All in favor? Opposed, carried. We'll take about a 5-minute break, and then we'll move into closed. We'll deal with the items in closed.